Right, before I get started on today's video, just deal with your comments on yesterday's video. Well, I say deal with them. I'll deal with them at the end of this video. So, for those of you that don't know, day before yesterday, we were talking about Alex Scott. Alex Scott is rumoured to be the Bristol Jack Grealish, right? We had a little laugh about it. We had a joke, and I mentioned that I might be the, I don't know, what did I say? The Berkshire Beecham, or the Berkshire Mark Boogers, something like that. I asked you to tell me what you were, and I said, basically, give me your best shot, and what I'll do is I'll give somebody, let's see here, I'll give somebody a Hammers Chat coaster for the best one. There's loads of them. I mean, there's loads of them. So I'm going to read through a few at the end of this, and then just keep your eye on yesterday's video. You should get a notification on your phone. I'll write a reply to someone and let you know that you've won. Send me your address, and I'll get that out to you. But brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But we'll deal with it at the end of this video. What I want to talk about right now is this transfer by committee, which you may or may not have heard of. There's been a lot of, should we call it, leaks or clarification from the club about what exactly is the structure of West Ham's transfer dealings. So we've got Tim Steidten, who's come in with his massive scarf, and he's meant to be the director of football. We've also got a sporting director, which is Mark Noble. We've got obviously a manager, who is David Moyes, and the fourth person in this transfer committee is David Sullivan. Now, the committee is conspicuous. I was going to say Rob Newman's conspicuous by his absence from this committee. We're going to leave that to one side. I'm not looking to cause trouble with this. I quite like this to work. And it's not without precedent. There are a lot of clubs who do this. I think probably the most famous two are actually Manchester City, who is Pep Guardiola, and I think all the backroom team were basically poached from Barcelona as well. And of course, I think most famously is Liverpool. So it was Jurgen Klopp. I think that was put in place by Christian Perslow when he was there. So this is the way things seem to go. I'm just more interested in how the dynamic of ours will work. Mark Noble being on there, I think, is a good thing. I'm pleased to see him involved, and I'm very much pleased to see, obviously, to see Steidten on there. It'd be a bit weird if he wasn't, really, wouldn't it? I am concerned about how David Moyes will react to this, but David Sullivan has been at pains to point out, well, we sort of had this anyway, but it was just me and David Moyes. Well, that dynamic's going to be very, very different now, because there's going to be four people in there. And I guess four people getting their heads together is going to be really, really important. What concerns me is, let's take a few examples. Let's take James Ward-Prowse, for instance. So James Ward-Prowse comes up in this meeting. We know that David Moyes wants him. I can't imagine for a second that David Sullivan would want to sanction the funds, because at the end of the day, he's going to be the one writing the cheque, right? I can't imagine for a second that he's going to want to sanction a deal for a 28-year-old. I also find it hard to believe that Tim Steidten, I still haven't decided, is going to sit there and say, OK, yeah, let's just tick that one off. So I think when you look at it and you think, OK, here's a midfielder from Southampton, and I do stress, he's not even Southampton's best midfielder. But when he comes, Steidten's going to say, I've got someone better. 40 million for this 28-year-old. Honestly, there's three better players in the Bundesliga. I've got someone playing in the second division in France. There's a guy in Brazil who could do this job. This is what we want him there for. And at that point, they then have to decide. One thing that does worry me about all this, when I say one thing, there's a number of things that worry me, but I am quite hopeful by it. And it's how long is this going to take? And this is why I think it was really important that the director of football was put in place not once the transfer window was 15 days old, before the start of the transfer window. What they've got to do is have a meeting, and I guess they're going to have to do that, then before they sort of focus on any player, and then maybe that player's got to be scouted. I know Steidten's, I keep changing his name from Steidten to Steidten. I know his way of recruiting is more data-driven. But is that not quite a prolonged process? I mean, it's quite hard, even just normally in normal everyday life. It's quite hard to get four people on a Zoom call and nail down a time anyway, isn't it? So I think that in itself, and then anything above £1 million worth of spending has got to be sanctioned and signed off by the board. And our board's quite big now. So there seems to be a lot of stages to this, which has got me maybe a little bit worried. I do wonder who's going to have the final say. And here is what is a slight concern, is that the noise is coming from the club is that they don't know who's going to have the final say yet. Although David Moyes has veto. So here's a little scenario for you. So if that doesn't make sense, nobody's got final say but David Moyes has veto. Well, that's final say, isn't it? Or have I got that wrong? So let's say, let's go with this kid. Let's go with this kid, Franca. Franca is the whiz kid from Brazil, meant to be the next Vicinius Jr. And Steidten wants to push for this guy. So he makes his case, and David Moyes is making his case for Harvey Barnes. What's to stop David Moyes just saying, no, I veto that? I veto him. Does that mean David Moyes gets to force through to Harvey Barnes? I'm not saying I don't want Harvey Barnes. I'm just creating a little scenario in my own mind. I do think that this, as a model, I do think that this is a model that can work. But I think it's probably a model that can work for a coach, a first-team coach rather than a manager, who has grown up and developed his career through this system. Everybody's running this system on the continent pretty much. But David Moyes, I think he's going to find it a little bit harder to operate within this system. You'd understand that we all get set in our ways the older we get. I mean, you can understand that David Moyes might be set in his ways. He might not. He might find this difficult. There's also been the suspicion that unless David Moyes has signed a player, he doesn't quite dip them into the first team as quickly as he might his own signings. Now, the one to disprove that would be Thomas Souček, who of course was scouted by Jordan Miles. So I don't know. There's evidence for and there's evidence against. It is a little bit of a weird one, really. So David Moyes forcing these things through. I can see a situation, and I hope I'm wrong, where two people get frustrated. That's David Moyes and Tim Steidten. It's changed again. David Moyes gets frustrated because he's got somebody else there telling him what to do. Now, the reason I think Steidten might get frustrated is because he may well think, well, hold on a second, I've been brought in here to do a job and this guy's vetoing what I'm suggesting. One of the reasons he came in, not one of the reasons he came in, one of the reasons that was given for Steidten leaving Bayer Leverkusen was he wanted more authority, if you like. That wasn't the word that was used. It wasn't authority, but I'm not a million miles away with that word. He wanted to be able to make more decisions, certainly. And is he going to find that that basically comes over and he has no power? Is he going to be doing a glorified Rob Newman role? I don't know. It's really weird. I don't understand fully what's going to happen here. And I think we're not going to get our answers until we make our first couple of signings. I think the longer this goes on, without any signings coming in, the bigger worry it is. Am I worried at the moment? No, I'm not. But it does bring in another conspiracy theory, doesn't it? If we are slow with signings, and we spent a lot of money last season, but if we're slow with signings this season, there is that conspiracy theory which will now be said, well, is it this committee? Maybe they just can't agree on signings. Maybe this is what's holding us up. So I don't think they need to make clarity to us as fans. I think they can be vague, and I think it can be tenuous. But I think within each other, within that group, it needs to be absolute clarity, absolute certainty. And they need to develop a working relationship, or someone's going to go. And I think that person will be David Moyes, but do not rule out the possibility of Tim Steidten saying, well, hold on a second, you brought me in as director of football. I'm not doing much football directing here. It's a big role. I think in this country, traditionally, it's seen as a nothing role. In a lot of the continental clubs, it's seen as the main job. And David Moyes sees his job as the main job. Tim Steidten's coming in, seeing his job as the main job. They both think they're the main guy. That's a problem. Something that I discussed yesterday with myself and Gio did a mug of tea on Patreon last night. And it was the role of Mark Noble in all this. And we were scratching around trying to think, well, hold on a second, how many people are in a matchday squad? And let's call it 20 in a matchday squad, right? Because I know it's different. You have more people on the bench for European games and slightly fewer for Premier League games. Well, let's say it's an average of 20. Mark Noble's role in this conglomerate of football, that's a bad way, it's a smorgasbord of football decision making at West Ham. His role is to bring players through from the academy, but for some reason, and I want him on there, by the way, I don't mean that to sound derogatory. For some reason, he's on this committee for new transfers come in for senior players. And it's good to have an extra pair of ears, and it's good. I really do. I think for him to have a sounding board there is very good. But his job, his remit, he is mandated to smooth the pathway from the academy to the first team. So what we've heard is that he released a load of players last season, like Ekwa and what's his name, Otto Fleck's been allowed to leave, to make it easier for the under-18s, who are truly superb because they won the FA Youth Cup, to transition from the first team, from the youth team to the first team. Excuse me. There was a lot of times last season when there were no youth players involved. And I do wonder how this is going to manifest itself. Because I think if I was in those meetings and I was Mark Noble and that's my job, I'd probably be saying to David Moyes, you have 20 players on a matchday squad. It's my job to promote people from the youth team to the first team squad. You keep putting 2 goalkeepers on the bench. You keep on... All right, I understand one of those is usually a young player. There's usually no room for any number and any of my players. And I do wonder if that is going to cause conflict. And I know they get on, David Moyes and Mark Noble. If Mark Noble's going to be saying, give me 2. Give me 2. All right, get 18 senior players, but give me 2. Give me 2 youth players in that squad, so I've got 2 youth players on the bench. Can you do that for me? So I want it to work, and I hope it will work. But what I'm seeing is with this committee is more opportunity for conflict than there is for it to be, excuse me, bit chesty, than for it to be successful. And I think that's a little bit of concern there. They're all going to have to get on really, really well. And I do wonder about that. Because forget football, just think general life. You put 10 people together in a room, all right? I'm not talking about a group of mates that have known each other for years. That's different. But you put 10 people together in a room, not everyone's going to get on. It's always the way. You come on. You'll know someone at work you don't like, right? It's the way it is. It's just personalities. Different personalities clash. And I hope this. I think it's the right way forward. But I just hope the mixture of personalities is going to be right. Those are my thoughts on it when I've just heard this, this committee of football, the Football Council. Anyway, just as an add-on at the end, folks, sorry, I went to try and read them. There's far too many. I'm going to have to do it as a separate video. I sort of apologise, but I don't want to just read out 2 or 3. I think I'm denying you the fun and the genius of what so many of you have written. There's also things in between that aren't... that aren't related to our little silly little game, really. I did want to say I do like this. They call me the Corby Cambiasso. Actually, it's the Corby Carl Jenkinson. That's the sort of stuff I'm looking for. I'll do it. I'll upload it as a separate video. We'll just have a little bit of a laugh when you see it pop up. Though that's all it'll be. It'll be a little bit of a laugh. Right, I'm going to get this uploaded now, and I'll catch up with you later.